Hello, hello. I'm here with one of my most favorite people on this planet, in one of my most favorite places on this planet. We are sitting in Salt Spring, on Salt Spring Island in beautiful British Columbia. And to my right, I'm looking at the ocean, a beautiful harbor. And to my left, I'm looking at one of my favorite people, Luanne Warner Katz. She is, she's a lot of things personally to me, and she's a lot of things to a lot of people. But the basics of what she's done in her life is she's been a percussionist. Since when did you start playing percussion?
When I was 10.
10. And what was the first percussion? I mean, there's so many options when you play percussion. What was the first thing?
When I was 10, it was a big year for me because I knew that was the year I got to join the band.
Nice.
And it wasn't just, oh, I get to be in the band. I get to be a drummer. I didn't have any other options.
Like the full kit, like full drum set?
Oh, it didn't matter, as long as I could hit something. And, you know, my wanting to do that started before then at the kitchen table with the ketchup bottles and the glasses and all that. And that with growing up on the farm and having my very first musical experience be standing on the fence, looking at the cattle and singing to them.
Wow.
And they would all en masse turn toward me and listen to me sing. It's like, ooh, I like this.
You have an audience. a bovine audience.
So that was where it started. And 5th grade, 10 years old, it's like, you get to join the band, pick your instrument. It's like, I'm going to be drummer. And it was.
It's interesting to me that you have this singing thing, which is more of a melodic thing, and then you gravitated to a rhythmic thing first.
Well, there were so many people that kids that wanted to be drummers, that they had to weed them out by placing the requirement you had to have piano lessons for at least a year before you could be a drummer.
Very smart. Yeah.
So, thus, most of the percussionists in my junior high school band were girls.
No kidding.
Because I think there are more girls who played piano than guys. Huh. And so right away I started off with kind of
So you had kind of a melody and harmony kind of thing down. How long had you been doing piano? The 2 years before you got into that? Or was it longer
That's
than
a good question. Yeah, probably around 2 years. I don't know when I started that. We always had a piano in the house. So there's a photo of me playing piano at a year and a half old. So
were your parents musical? I don't think I've ever asked you that.
No, they weren't. My dad was a farmer, and my mom always wanted to be a musician. And she was and remains profoundly supportive, taking us to piano lessons, encouraging us to practice, taking us to concerts. And I actually think that's where the drummer thing for me started. Because my earliest memory of going to a performance was going to a community concert series in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It was a musical, could have been Oklahoma. My mom bought us front row tickets. And I'm sitting right in the front row, the action's on the stage, and I could care less what's going on stage because I am peering down in the pit.
That's amazing.
And I am watching the drummer's hands.
Wow.
There was music going on, but it was the hands that really captured me.
Wow.
I just wanted to do that. I just had to do that. Previous life stuff, I don't know. That's always been my theory.
It's crazy to think that if you had sat in like the 20th row, you would have not had that experience.
I know. I maybe would play clarinet or something. I don't know.
You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that.
I never wanted to do anything else.
Yeah.
My second choice, if I had to have picked another instrument, was trombone.
Interesting.
I think I wanted to be in the back of the band.
Okay. Well, you chose the very, very back of the band.
I know, the best.
Yeah. It's I mean, obviously what you do that I know you well through you obviously playing marimba, which is the best of both worlds, which is the melodic and rhythmic element of the. Would you say that when you got into the drum stuff, you were feeling the rhythmic element was great, but did you kind of miss the harmony and miss the, like, was there a miss, like what drew you to making, obviously marimba would be your main thing. Would you say that?
I would say that now.
Okay.
But it really started with drums.
So you were just at peace being a percussionist and just kind of growing from the drum set.
Yeah, at peace. I don't think I've ever been at peace.
No, none of us are. I'm sorry. That was a terribly, terrible word. And please call me on any of those because I deserve all of it. But yeah, we're never at peace. I understand.
But at 10 years old, you start drums. They give you a block of wood with a rubber pad on it and a pair of drumsticks. And you hit on this pad. It was excruciatingly boring.
Yeah.
And I think it was a test to see who could endure that. If you could make it through that, you were on the path.
Yeah.
And after a few weeks, I said to my mom, I want to quit because this is so boring. And to her credit, she went into the band director and said, is there anything we can do to kind of keep this going? And he put me in with another young girl, and I remember studying with her and being in the practice room with her, and he kind of accelerated it a bit. And when we moved on to drums, again, I can't really remember, except my parents bought me a drum set it up in the basement, and turned me loose.
That's amazing.
So it really was drums in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's somewhat surprising to me that I gravitated toward marimba, or have kind of dug a groove there, because it really, really started with rhythm, groove, hitting things, and many divergence along the way.
So how did you? It's crazy because do you think about percussion? Percussion is such a specialized thing because there's so many different things that are involved. I mean, if you go see a symphony, there's so many instruments back there that they're expensive. It's you have to have. I'm like where we're sitting right now. Right behind me is this really big, beautiful gong, and it's just sitting there. It's like what? I mean, I wouldn't buy a gong. Like I have a plug-in that I hit the button and it goes gong, but I understand the beauty of it. And to hear the beauty in that is so foreign to me because when I see you and I see you play marimba and I see the passion behind it and how you have it in your hands and where it is, I mean, you can't help but notice that. But I can't put myself in those shoes. Like hitting a gong with the passion and the precision and understanding like elements of sound. I don't have that detail-oriented brain. So I'm curious, I think that's what it is, right? You're just chasing different sounds to augment a certain situation.
I guess it is.
What's the role of a percussionist? Like if you go see a symphony and the percussion is taken away, the energy is just gone, and it could be just a cymbal crash. But the way that you crash a cymbal and the way that you choke a cymbal and the way that you do all those different things, like there's an intricacy which has to do with obviously your personality as well, but there's an intricacy that exists there. I mean, were you attracted to the details of being a percussionist?
No, I think there are two things here. One is it's about vibrations.
Interesting. Okay.
So you hit a button and it makes a gong or a tam-tam sound. There is nothing like standing up to that big piece of metal and striking it and getting it vibrating.
Wow.
It is something we think about as percussionists, specifically in orchestras where you have to know how to hit it to get the soft sound or the big sound, fast, slow, whatever you're required to do. You have to know how you get that vibration going. So there's that relationship to the tangible. It's not just a button. I physically have to get that thing moving. And the other thing is, and I don't know if we each as instrumentalists ever really make this decision in the beginning, you have to like what the aspect that makes the sound. Like if you're going to be a brass player, you have to enjoy that your voice comes from your mouth, from your lips, from that airstream, from those vibrations. A string player has to enjoy that feeling of the bow going across the strings and making that vibration. For me, and this goes back to early on, a snare drum roll. The feeling of sensation and I wish you had a visual of this, but it's the fulcrum in your hand between your thumb, where your thumb hits your first joint of your index finger, where we grip the sticks, where we grip the mallets. Except for hand drums, we don't touch our instruments. So we get them vibrating, we make the sound with the control of that spot right there. So you have to enjoy that tactile information right in that spot. And that thrills me. That excites me. That has made a life. Yeah. That has made my career of enjoying that sensation. I've played string instruments, as an education major. I learned how to play all the other instruments. So to drag a bow across strings or to make it go back and forth, I get that. it was not anything I wanted to spend time doing. And then there are those that can spend a lifetime perfecting that sound. So I don't understand what has people drawn to certain things and not others, but it's been the one main relationship for me that has stayed through every other relationship except for my family, that's come and gone. But this relationship with percussion, with vibration, with touching these tangible things and making them vibrate to speak has been my life. Decades.
Yeah, but vibrations being the thing, because you're right, on whatever instrument it is, even with the human voice, that's what creates the sound. Of course, that's what sound is at the basic level. But
right. Well,
to
you're
feel
making
it in your
a
hands.
yeah.
To feel it, yeah, it's man.
But you're making that vibration on the reed.
Of course,
with your
absolutely.
breath.
And the intricacies of feeling that reed vibrating, I feel that same way as you're talking about your hands. It's like I know where that is and I know how to get certain sounds absolutely from making it do different things in different vibrations.
Right.
Sure.
And there's a tangible pleasure in that. And that little aperture in the world of sound, there's your voice.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm curious about this part of it because it comes through and you're playing and I see you're passionate about where it is and you're telling me that it's in your hand. That's where the vibration is. I feel it's easier for me to understand, like, because saxophone to me feels like I'm singing. It feels like a voice. Like my throat is working like a singer. I'm supporting from a diaphragm and I'm getting the reed to vibrate, but I feel like I'm singing. Like, I could never, I'm lying. Maybe on piano I could feel it a little bit, and just touch that when I was at certain times. But how do you sing with your hands? How do you feel that vibration in your hands? Like, how does your soul get to your hands?
Yeah. It's kind of a hard thing to describe. It is part of our job to get something from the heart or from your core. That really is where it starts, as well as from our feet. We stand when we play. So that groundedness is kind of the beginning of the energy. And, this is where kind of technique comes in of how do you make this sound that you can hear in your head and then put that with the feeling that you have, the soul wanting to communicate. How can I marry those two and have it come out without my words to describe it? Really, that's the art of it. That's the years of practicing playing with that fulcrum spot, changing tensions. What happens when I do a light lift stroke or I play down into something? Or how do I connect these sounds? There are technical ways to make that happen. And I believe it starts from your ears. It starts from hearing a line, hearing what you want to say in this particular line, and singing it in your being, and then all of the muscles that have to happen. And again, I come back to technique. It's like, there's a certain way of making a marimba sound in percussion in general, that comes from your shoulders, the weight of the arm, the movement of the arm, how you end that with the wrist and the touch of the fingers and how that's released. It's all of that. And, you practice your scales. The scales are to work on accuracy, but it's also to hear those sounds in your mind and then to practice making that come out. It's like, oh, I can play that scale like that. And if I do, I lighten my grip, what happens there? And then that's your palette, that's your color, your paints that you have when you are on stage. And okay, I'm going to pull this out. And I think one of the challenges with percussion, and I think uniquely on marimba too, marimba could be very monochromatic. It's all the same wood.
Yeah.
The challenge is to make everything as colorful as possible, not just rosewood brown. How can I make this marimba sound like a percussion instrument? How can I make it sound like a cello? How can I make it sing? And again, therein is the art.
Yeah, And being it outside your body. I mean, watching you play, like the flow of, it's so interesting because I mean, when I say a diaphragm, that's the basis, a foundation for singing or for any type of woodwind playing or brass playing or whatever. It's obviously for you, it's your feet. You're grounded. That's where you stand. And then your singing, to me, if I'm watching you play, comes from your arms and comes from your upper body, and it's this movement and it's this touch for sure that you have. And I think the thing that has been kind of consistent with everybody that I've talked to on here, being it a producer, being it a instrumentalist, or being it whatever, a singer-songwriter, it's interesting that you say building your color or your palette, because it's such a people often spend so much time trying to just play and perform instead of practicing and building their toolbox. I like to call it the toolbox,
right.
But palette is much better, like different colors that you can pick from. And for you, that's interesting to hear that it's a touch, like it's a feeling. And I would say that percussion probably has the most broad options as far as palette is concerned. And when it's missing, you miss it, when it's gone.
Yeah, and you can define the range of your palette. I mean, it's really easy to have a narrow palette. And depending what genre you find yourself in, I mean, there are appropriate palettes for playing in the orchestra, appropriate palettes for chamber music, rock and roll. I mean, it depends where you find yourself. But the more broad that palette is, the more interesting it is for your own experience with it. Certainly for the audience too.
Yeah, and the ability to, like you're saying, where you have this palette at your disposal because you put the time and effort in to develop this palette to the point where you don't have to think about your palette, where you can access your color, but you don't have to think about where that color came from,
right? So
that you can now be in touch.
There was a period, quite a few years ago, I decided to get into electronic music, into MIDI, because I thought, this is the answer. I don't have to move the marimba anymore. I don't have to move all the stuff. I can bring a keyboard. And at this time it was a mallet cat and a MIDI controller. And I thought, okay, I just have my mallet cat, one set of mallets, and I guess I need an amp. I guess I need a board. I guess I need a rack of sounds. And so bought a few things, and I'm messing around with it, and I find, okay, this is the color that I want. And I'm sitting at my computer tweaking these pads because there were different levels of attack. So if I hit it this way, I get this sound. Hit a little harder, I get this sound. And I would program that in. And after a few weeks of this, it's like, no, I spent my lifetime putting this into my hands. So real time, I can make this happen. And I sold my mallet cat and went back to the acoustic stuff for that reason. Yeah. And now I'm coming full circle again and buying more MIDI stuff and messing around, but with a different understanding, a different relationship to it.
Yeah, that ad brought to you by all musicians everywhere that realize that MIDI cannot replace the real thing.
Exactly. It's fun and it's a great tool.
Yeah.
And certainly me, for this project that I'm working on, for me being here on this island, which offers many musicians and really amazing resources that you can't even imagine, I still find myself in my studio by myself, playing by myself most of the time.
Yeah.
So the MIDI, the electronic options, gives me an access to a whole other world that is pretty limitless too.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of conversations about that as you've opened that world up again to the possibilities of all this type of satellite recording and the conversations you can have and the inspiration you can have from cultures outside of where you're at, because you live on an island. It's a badass island.
It is.
I don't blame you. Like if you could only see the view that's behind me right now. But but it also is an isolating situation for sure. And we've had that talk about just cultures and being inspired and the importance of always instilling yourself into a culture of people that are going to give you light and give you life and remind you of why you do stuff. But the internet can allow that, I find, it's getting better, but the thing that you're accessing it's nice, because I know I want to talk about your symphony days and stuff like that, but you can access those people now on Facebook and you can share stuff with them and you guys can talk to each other. What you up to? What are you playing with? And it's just like MIDI. It's just like a marimba on MIDI. It's not the same, but at least it's something.
It is,
it's something
exactly.
to see and be inspired by. I want to talk more about your kind of foray into recording here in a second because I'm super inspired by that, and I know people will be inspired by that too. But tell me, so how did you find yourself wanting to join and do the symphony thing, and how did you find that, and how was that? What came out of that part of your life? Like, did you feel in either direction, in a positive or a negative or kind of a neutral direction? Because I know a lot of symphony players, and I have lots of conversations with them, and if you want me to be completely frank, they're not always the most positive human beings on planet Earth, because they're stuck in this chair that they have to be in all the time, playing music that sometimes they don't want to play, and they always want more money, and they always, it's an issue. Obviously, it could be a thing. It's like the grass is always greener, but man, everything's relative kind of vibe. It's like, you got a pretty good gig, dude, or dudette. It's
Right.
like, live that life and sink into it, or get out, like, just stop complaining about it, because people covet this stuff, but we complain about what we don't have. So I'm curious about because I know you as this bright shining light of positivity and this beautiful person. Like, how did you find yourself existing in a symphony environment, and did you find it to be fulfilling for you, or was it fulfilling at the time, or like, how did you feel?
Yeah, at the time, well, it was many things, because it spanned quite a few decades.
I was going to say, how long, like, what were the symphonies that you had been a part of? There was 2, right?
Well, many.
Oh, okay.
It started with
maybe.
the South Dakota Symphony,
Oh, cool.
which was
Okay.
the very first. My boyfriend at the time, his mother found a tiny little ad in the Sioux Falls Argus Leader.
Oh, wow.
They were looking for a percussionist.
Nice.
So I show up at Augustana College for an audition, and I had never taken an audition before. I show up literally with my snare drum sticks and probably a pair of xylophone mallets, and had some solos prepared, and they put excerpts on the stand, and I remember that it was the tambourine part to Berlioz', blanking on it right now, but it was a tambourine part, but they had me play it on snare drum. And at the time, I didn't know the French translations of all the instruments, so I didn't know any better. Played it on the snare drum, played my solos, and by the time I walked out of there, I was in the orchestra.
Amazing.
And that was my very first gig.
Yeah.
And also at the same time, I was in college, University of South Dakota, played in the Sioux City Symphony, which was near there. The symphony was kind of a means to an end, where it was one gig you could do that you actually got paid for. Yeah. You joined the union, that was the first step, and then there you are in this system that's already set up for you. You don't have to go get a manager, you don't have to create the gigs, that machine is already in motion. And
it's guaranteed. I mean, there's something beautiful about that, for sure.
It's guaranteed as far as
long as you pull your weight, of course.
Certainly, yeah, you have to show up and do your part of it. But, the union has been really amazing in that light, to have the scale be livable most of the time. And so that system's already there. And you can participate in this wherever you live. And as a freelancer and kind of a peripatetic musician for many years,
You're going to have to tell me what that word means. I'm admitting I'm an idiot. Peripatetic.
Peripatetic, I know that well because it means moving around a lot.
Peripatetic, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I lived in many places.
Yeah.
And, as opposed to thriving where you were born, I always knew I would wander to other places. Yeah. So starting there, did the orchestras there, then went out to the West Coast, lived in Portland and Seattle for a while. And again, the system is there. So you move into town, you join the local union, you figure out who does the hiring, you audition for them, and you get on the extra list. And then you start playing, you get more known, and then you know of other auditions. And out in Portland was where I first became aware of the whole symphony audition circuit. And
dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, exactly. And, at the time, again, it was a great way to be able to make a living in music. And orchestral music is incredible. I always said I had the best seat in the house. Yeah. I'm on stage, I get to stand up and feeling like I lord over the whole orchestra, and I get to move around. I'm not just stuck in a chair. I do only get to add highlights. I don't get to play the theme, but I get to do the choicest sounds. At the end of a flute line, and then the very last note, I get to add a triangle note that is just the sparkle at the end of this line. And if you do it perfectly, it's magic. And again, you have to love that. I mean, again, I go back to that fulcrum. It's like, ooh, that feeling of just going bing, right at the right time. Getting to do a great cymbal crash at the peak of a phrase.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the best. Yeah. Sitting in the timpani chair and playing these really profound, deep grooves, usually with the bass section. You know, it's everything. You get to drive it. You get to add the peak at the top. You get to make the groove happen at times. It's never boring, or it can be never boring. You know, at one point for me, I felt like it was really confining to me. And I became this player that I could step into my classical percussion role, and I had a stance. I knew when I play snare drum, this is what I look like, this is what I do, and you just do it. And if that's all you do, it can make you crazy. For me, I will speak. And I do think the sane choice for all classical musicians would be to also do chamber music or do something outside of that. And so for me as percussion, there were many options for that. When I came to the Bay Area in San Francisco, I happened upon these women who were doing electronic music, who were doing MIDI percussion. There's this band called De Cuckoo.
Okay. That sounds amazing.
It was amazing. They, two main women who started it, built their own MIDI controllers. One was like the Wizard of Oz, behind the curtain, sampling everything she could get her hands on and chopping up these tunes and creating world beat tribal cyber funk, I think was kind of the description. But this was a turning point for me musically, because here I am in the orchestra. You don't move much. You don't attract attention. And again, especially as percussion, you got to be careful to not be too flamboyant. Or at least that was my perception. And all of a sudden I'm playing in De Cuckoo and I have a headset in. I'm wearing bright colors. I put 3 dreadlock braids in my hair with beads at the end.
Luanne, it's like I don't even know you.
I know. The many incarnations of. And then I'm on stage, and the other people thought, she's really going to look like Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm up there, which there was that aspect. But it allowed me to bring out this other side of myself, where I could move when I played. I could be happy when I played. I could smile. I could dance. I could sing. And I'm not a singer. Yet I could use my voice, and as long as it ran through these great effects boxes and added reverb and all that, it was great fun. Yeah. And then I would go back to the orchestra after those gigs, and I felt some freedom. I mean, I couldn't take all of De Cuckoo back to the symphony stage, but I still felt like, I am doing this with my whole body. And it was also about that time that I saw a number of musicians who were those that you were describing, the really angry, depressed, ungrateful classical musicians who were at the top of their game and had really great gigs.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that might be what it is. I mean, there's just nothing past that in their minds. In their mind's eye, they don't have something to work towards.
It's so hard to win, in quotes, those gigs because...
Well, there's the first mistake, is calling it winning. And that's what they call it. I'm not saying that's your words. That's what they call it.
Well, it's so competitive. You have to work so hard. So finally you get this gig and then you're doing it. And that's great. And then after a while it's like, okay, now what? And everybody has to answer that question for themselves. So now what? You can either continue to really revel in this amazing thing that is the orchestra, because it's an incredible instrument.
And there are people that do that.
Oh,
we don't want to paint that big brush, but there are people that, but it is very common. It's a common thing for sure.
It is thrilling music, and there's nothing like it. But if you find yourself unsatisfied there, the onus is on you to figure out where to from here, or what can I add to this. And again, I feel really lucky in percussion that, you have all the myriad of choices. And
you have all the frequencies. That's one of the only instruments that you have that, like you're talking about a triangle hit. And, now that you're getting into recording, you're learning about frequencies.
yeah.
But you have this, you have that, and then you have everything. Like you have this wide range of frequencies to pick from, and you're cutting through. And if the composition is the appropriate composition, and the writer's a good writer, he or she understands the frequencies of that as well, and realizes that the flutes in that triangle hit's going to sit on top of the flutes and heighten that moment, or those basses, and you're going to get something that's going to rumble underneath with that consistent, and that probably, to me, now that I've thought about it, would make it a very exciting, because if you're a first violinist, you're just kind of existing in one place consistently, frequency wise,
You are, but again, you chose that for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
You get off on those strings vibrating.
Yeah.
So you are in your happy place there.
You should
and
be, yeah.
Thank goodness not everybody wants to be a percussionist
Yeah.
or a violinist, or a dentist or a doctor, or, everybody picks their thing that turns them on.
It's so fascinating what we're all drawn to.
I know. Yeah. I've often been asked why percussion, why, and I really feel like it chose me.
Yeah.
That there's a personality sync there, and I feel so lucky to have found it. It hasn't been an easy life, but it's like it just kind of had to be. And I'm not emulating anyone that I can think of, but it just happened.
Well, to me, it's, I'm just thinking about it now and thinking about this conversation, like frequency chasing, if you're a frequency chaser, that's what you are. That's what I'm going to start calling you from now on. You chase that in life too. I mean, that just knowing you, and the way that you've looked at your life, and obviously this wanderer that's finding different places and never really scared to explore something new. And
yeah, it's also called an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah,
there
frequency
is
chaser equals adrenaline junkie.
Yeah, there is a kind of a shadow side of that.
That's why the drummer in the band's always the crazy one.
Exactly, but the very best.
But the very best. So speaking of that, I want to talk about this kind of, like this. One of the most inspiring things. There's so many things. I mean, you're just an inspiring being in general.
Oh, thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, and
takes one to know one.
Well, I mean, it's, you always joke about all my serendipity moments that I have in my life that I always bring up with you, and all the kind of things, which is cool, good and bad, but
it's very cool.
But one of the things that I've seen unfold since we've met has been this beautiful hunger and curiosity in not allowing yourself to kind of sit in a place where, I mean, when we first met, I wasn't in a very good place, and that's obviously all kind of changed and moved to a better place. But we were kind of both kindred spirits in a way that you were on an island, and I was in Nashville, and I love living there, but I also was missing what you had, right. And you were missing what I had. So it was like we would go on these walks, or we'd sit out by the water and we talk, where it's like you wanted to be around an inspirational group and culture of people, which is what I was around, but I was obviously missing home, which is what you had.
Right.
So it's interesting to look now where we're both at, where you have now created this life of where you and I are talking, and you're recording and you're doing things in your studio, which I want to talk about. And then now I'm here sitting across from you, traveling more, but also having that culture there. So we're almost like we're finding that balance, and each of us wanted what the other thing was looking for at the time.
Just things needed to be tweaked just a little
smidge,
bit. Yes.
I mean, you gotta always be inspired, and if you've got to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
And, I look at that ocean and that water, and that's it for me.
Yeah.
I know that's it.
Yeah.
And I know you have that, and that can be enough. But obviously, being inspired by the people that are doing things, that's a thing. I get that. I would miss that.
Yeah, community is invaluable.
Everything. Yeah. I mean, I value Nashville for that. Like, I have some amazing, beautiful friends down there that I'll never, they'll never not be in my life in some capacity. And technology is wonderful because we can maintain that. But
right.
To go back and be in the studio next to them, or like fire ideas back and forth, or write together at the highest level,
Yeah.
You can't get that anywhere else. That's why you take that chance. So anyway, I want to talk quickly about how we met. and how that transpired into what it is now. And I think it's a beautiful thing, and it was a beautiful moment for both of us, because I needed what you were doing and what you and Kim have here, and it was it changed my world, and I was thankful that I was able to help out in a situation where you needed. So I remember, we have this mutual friend named Rebecca Grimm, who's a tiny house owner on the island, and I was supposed to come stay at your house a couple of winters ago, right?
Right.
And it ended up not working out, and I just called you out of the blue last 2 summers ago, and I said, hey, can I come up for the weekend? And Ken was on the phone, and I remember talking to Ken. So Ken is her amazing husband, who is a yogi, health nut. We probably don't need to go into, well, we can a little bit, because I think that's an inspiring story, but I don't want you to rehash that story, because you've already done that a million times. But these two people are two of the best humans on planet Earth. So anyway, I talked to Ken, and Ken's like, yeah, you can come stay at the shop. I'm going to be working. It's going to be loud. And I'm like, it's cool. Like, it's fine. Like, it's cool. So I remember getting on the ferry and coming over for the first time, and I'd never been to the island in 20 years. Like, that was the first time.
Yeah.
So I roll off, and you say to me, I'm actually doing a recording today at the art center. We're going to be setting up my marimba. Just meet us there, right? So,
and I had I'd hired an engineer from Victoria to come over.
Very sweet human being.
Awesome.
The
Paul
best.
Lechkow, he's incredible. So he came over. And
also a great musician, too.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, what a great guy that is. Anyway, it was just what a beautiful experience. So I come over, and you're like, Ken is like loading this marimba in, and when we're talking marimba, like, your marimba is no joke.
No, it's not. 8 feet long, 5 octaves.
And you have a marimba vehicle that carries it.
Yes. Oh, and vibraphone too.
Yes,
I needed both.
True. Yeah, of course you needed both.
Yes.
Yeah. So I roll in, and I'm just there, and I meet you, and I'm like, okay, this is really cool, and you're about to do a recording. Cool, I know what that's about. I can't wait to just do this and be a part of this and watch this, And then I talked to Ken, and Ken's this big, woodworker and all this kind of stuff, and he's building a boat out of, and that's another passion. Like, I'm just like, who are these people, and why have they just fallen into my life?
It's the passion zone.
Exactly. That's exactly what this is. That's what this island is. It's the healing and passion zone. So, anyway, you started doing this recording, and I was watching the process, and it was really, really interesting, because you were doing exactly what I do every day, all the time down in Nashville. Is you were looking at this idea of stacking your marimba to this place where you wanted to be able to play along and do concerts to this recording. And it was so interesting to be able to, I tried to be a fly on the wall, but Paul was so open to just be like, hey, let's talk about how we can do this the best, And it started this thing where I'm staring at this person who has been an established musician for many, many years, who wants to accomplish a goal. But in order for her to accomplish this goal, she has to go through a lot of processes. A lot of those processes are going to be going from knowing nothing about DAWs or recording, nothing about microphones, nothing about recording techniques, to having to record and stack an instrument that really wasn't meant to do that, and also was one of the hardest instruments to capture and do that. And I'm looking at you, and you've done everything. Like, you can just probably sit back and look at this view for the rest of your life, but you chose not to. And you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. And so we start sitting there, we're talking, we're like, okay, well, what do we need? And you're like, well, how many channels do you need? She goes, well, what do you think? Like, what's channels? How many channels do I need? Like, well, and we're going back and forth. Like, you could buy the Apogee Quartet, you could buy this twin, and you're like, cool. The next time I talked to you, she's like, I got the quartet, it's on the way. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, you're down for this, And then sorry.
But I want to point out that when you stepped into the performance hall, I was in the middle of 3 really bad choices, or not bad choices, but wrong choices for this particular project. That Paul is an amazing recording engineer. He had just never done this kind of recording. He'd never worked with a click track. Yeah. He never had to. And I had arranged to have the concert hall stage, which is a beautiful, reverberant space, which is the exact opposite of what I really needed. I needed a dry space. Yeah. And that I had given the whole process over to someone else to tell me, this is a good take, this is a bad take, when it should fall on me. I really needed to hear that. So those three things were already in motion that were just taking me not the direction I needed to go. And you stepped in and very graciously turned that toward bringing it back home and getting this equipment, and very succinctly saying, you should get this DAW, you should upgrade your laptop so it's in this century, and get this gear and do it yourself. It's like, okay, I'm on it.
But that, if we're talking about paths of least resistance, that was not that path. Like, I think the third thing that you said is the most interesting, because you've never verbalized that to me, is that I know the first two are pretty obvious. The third thing of being in control of somebody, of being in control of you saying whether you like it or not.
Right.
Holy crap. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
You just nailed it. Like, if that's exactly what you built towards. So, yeah, so you went from knowing nothing to sending me, so we got you in Logic, we got you stacking. We talked about loops. We talked about all these different things. We talked about crossfading, all the stuff that like people don't know.
I am crossfade queen now.
Crossfades are the most beautiful thing in life.
They are.
Add an auto-tune for some people. But crossfade. It's just all the basic things that you need to create a beautiful sounding thing. And I saw you at the certain part of your career as an established musician who has done all these things, go into another world. And when you talk about your past, where you were getting in these bands, I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you had 3 dreads, but it makes sense now that you went down this path now,
right?
Because you're not scared to do that. You're not afraid of it.
Well, my career, again in quotes, now has really come full circle in many ways. The program I'm working on now, Play Like a Girl, was self-designed to have every piece have something outside of my comfort zone. And I didn't do that to make my life miserable, but I wanted to stretch. So there are things like, we've already spoken about percussion, how do you make it your voice? Well, in this program, I'm using my voice a lot, doing a piece for marimba and rap, flower pots and spoken poetry, a number of other little singing things, but in incorporating my physical voice in that. And the aspect of the whole electronic thing is, okay, I know I've dabbled in it a little bit and backed off, and it's like, no, I think it could be really cool. And taking this step with courage to say, okay, I'm committing to this. I give the program out to people and saying, this is what I'm doing, and then now I have to make it happen. And that's where I was at that point of, I had to move forward. I had to keep this going. And I couldn't shy away from figuring out the crossfades. Yeah. And I had to bring it to the stage. This wasn't just an exercise. I really wanted to stretch, and last year I felt like I had taken too big a bite, and it almost was. Yeah. But I made it happen, and now this year doing the redo version, the second version of Play Like a Girl, more, revised, getting rid of things that didn't work as well, adding in things that make it even more robust. I am thrilled about it, and it has brought out that person who stepped on the Dukuku stage with courage, kind of unprecedented. It's like, I'm stepping off the orchestra stage onto this performance stage with a band, and I'm dancing around with dreads in my hair. That is a cool thing, and that person will be on stage for the Play Like a Girl in November.
Yeah. I think one of the greatest gifts that you have that I've seen, and I want to know why, because I've never asked you this question until now. And I'm looking at these things that you've chased, and I'm looking at the things that you're hearing and feeling, and you're talking about courage, and you're talking about growth, and you're talking about all this stuff. You and I live currently in very different musical environments, where I'm in a place where I'm creating something for the masses to consume, and it's always in your head. And I'm not really existing in there much anymore. Most you have a lot to do with that. I could see that in you. You taught me that. But there's I live in an environment where it's like, okay, we got to make something that makes money.
Mm-hmm.
And I've lived in that for a long time. And when I met you and we started talking, and you play an instrument that's not a normal thing that I would come across.
Mm-hmm.
And you live in an environment on Salt Spring Island where if you were to take all of this beautiful country of Canada, and if you were to look at all the places where art is accepted and art is celebrated, I would say that in my experience, and I've seen a lot of Canada and been in and touring amongst Canada, this might be the most artistic place I've ever experienced because it's so accepting and so open.
Mm-hmm.
Being here reminded me that it's okay to chase things that's in you without the fear of it being accepted on the other side and being perceived.
Yeah.
And you are the antithesis of that to me, where editing those videos of your last concert that you did, you're playing pots and you're doing spoken word. Like that wouldn't go over in Nashville. I mean, it might in certain places, but there'll be like 10 people there and they're going to have really long beards and they're going to like have, round glasses and they're going to be drinking, what's the beer? They're going to be drinking some kind of whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like
you would be surprised.
Yeah.
I did that piece at where my mother lives in this gated community. I don't know what the definition, over 60, 70. Yeah. I mean, they're elderly people. Had a gathering for her 93rd birthday. I showed the video of my performance and did the flower piece, which is called To the Earth by Frederick Shevsky, for these people. And they were on the edge of their seats. So much so that one of the women came to me the next day and said, after your performance, I went online and I Googled that poem, To the Earth. I found it because she loves Greek poetry. She found other homages to Homer she said, I was up all night reading about this. So you never know how these pieces could be received in non-traditional performance spaces.
But there has to be, like, I'm not surprised by that because of watching, I'm not surprised by that because I think that if I look at the way that you performed it and the passion at which you performed it with, that's the X factor.
Thank you.
And it's something that's different and unique. And I remember just watching the video. I'm sitting in Nashville and I probably just finished some songwriting session for some TV commercial, and now I'm like editing your video, watching you playing pots and singing. And I'm looking at it and I'm literally, like, I just felt chills thinking about it, where I'm like, you're so passionate and you believed in it so much and it was so you. That came across, and that's what matters. Like, and people feel that in the room, and I think if you were to do it in a certain place, in a place like Nashville, you're right, it would go over like gangbusters because people, and I'm not slagging Nashville. It's any place that has a musical society that's built on trying to make money. If you're missing that passion in it, which some of that is missing that passion, you're just doing it for a purpose.
Right.
When you see that passion, you're like, holy crap. Like, it just affects you no matter what it is.
Well, there is no reason for me to do these concerts.
Exactly.
Ever.
Yeah.
I have played a million concerts. I don't ever really need to play another concert again. So for me to do this project is really because I have to. Because I really believe in it. And it matters to me. Each of these pieces I love for varying reasons. And there's something that I can do well.
Yeah.
And, that's another art of, as you age in a career, realizing there are things that you play better than others. Like, no one ever needs to hear me play Bach in performance. I play it in my studio and love it. Everybody should. Yeah. I don't need to, no one ever needs to hear me on stage.
It's one of those tools. You learn that tool.
Yeah, exactly. Another thought that I had was I'm giving a couple of master classes at Kwantlen Polytech and then at Portland State in Portland. And I'm thinking, what do these young musicians, what do I have that could benefit them? I mean, the technique, the level of playing that is being produced out of these universities is phenomenal. There are many things, in many ways, these students can play circles around me in various things. So I walk in and think, what do I have that could make their career better? And, I just roll back the tape of my career thinking, if I walked in to the 20-year-old me in the studio in school, I would want to have heard, follow your passion. And I don't mean that in a cheesy way. It's like you asked me earlier about my relationship with the orchestra. Was it good, bad, positive, indifferent? You know, it served a purpose. It was positive on many, many levels. I wish that I hadn't hung there so long. I wish this concert I'm doing in November, I wish I had found this 30 years ago. I wish I'd had the courage to say, this is what I need to do. It's not a direct line to money, which is a big deterrent when you're young and you need to pay your rent and you need to eat. So, you play in an orchestra, the instruments are usually there. You play a new music gig, you come with a van full of equipment you got to own and move yourself. It's not easy, but it has been one of the most satisfying projects that I've done, because it's really me. This is my voice. I don't know how many times I'll do it, and it's even morphed in the last year. It has come even more alive. And I am thrilled that I still get to do this, and that people will still show up to hear me play, because this matters to me. This is the real stuff I want to say. And I want to communicate that to the young students somehow in a way that they won't, gloss over and say, oh yeah, this old lady's saying, do what you love. It's more than that. Do what you're driven to do, because this has sustained me for my life. A number of other things I've tried have not stayed. So whatever that thing is that keeps you going, follow that and foster that and believe in it. Even if you think you can't see how it's going to pay the rent. It's like, that's the truth. That's the real you. That is the valid reason to get out of bed in the morning. And after decades of doing that every day, you'll have this amazingly rich life with great stories and hopefully great success, because you followed your North Star.
Yeah.
I just feel like I've come to it, even being a percussionist all these decades, the North Star is a little bit more in focus. Mm-hmm. Or at least this North Star. For a serial passionist as I am, this is the current thing that is, it just feels like truth to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of what's missing in the world right now, for sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It helps battle fear. Mm-hmm. It's scary to get on stage. This is a really personal show to me. And as I mentioned, I picked things out of my comfort zone in each of these. So it's not like I can dial it in and just, or not like I can just phone it in, show up and do it. I have to be present for every single piece, because I am not on autopilot. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it keeps it alive for me, and it makes it valid for people to show up for the performance. Mm. Recording of it, would be okay. It's being in the room with the actual physical piece vibrating. Yeah. I am vibrating. Yeah. The things I'm touching are vibrating, and the audience will feel that. Yeah.
Yeah, but you've said three things to me that are that make it difficult. The first thing is the fear of doing it. The second thing is the work that goes in, loading. You show up to symphony, the instruments are there, but you load the van. And then the third thing would be being present and not being carried. I mean, the fear as well, but not being present and not being worried or what this means, how this is being perceived. Mm-hmm. And those three things, like if you wipe those out, it's such a beautiful existence, because you're right. If you have a clear path, and you're willing to do the work, I think that's the thing that's mostly missing. Is people are willing to do the work, but if you're working towards something that is without fear, that's the superpower that can exist and the possibilities that can come from that. I think that. Sorry, I'm ingesting what you just said. Like, I think that's such a beautiful thing. And to find that, I mean, I think that when we talk about the world and how, if you look at social media and you look at these young kids that you're about to go hang out with, these college kids, and how they're inundated with all these people that look perfect and all these people that appear to be putting the work in, but the thing that's going to start connecting as robots take over the world is that what is your passion, what is in your heart, what is that kindness that exists there, and how do we leave this earth knowing that we've given something to the world, you know?
Right.
And I'm curious about, I mean, you say that finding your North Star is that move, that's what you're moving to. How do you feel about going back to when you're saying and you're doing these pieces and you're working towards these pieces and you're performing them? If I were to say, and this is a negative word, but the payoff, if we were to phrase that in a more positive way, what is the satisfaction that lies when you're done? Other than what you've explained, where you feel like you're part yourself. I mean, you've touched somebody. This woman that you spoke about. That's a beautiful payoff too. Like your heart has reached out and touched somebody to bring them to another person's creative energy as well. And now her life is enriched by your efforts and your stuff. Like what, if I were to use the word payoff in a more positive way, which I can't think of what that would be, what would it be for you? Like, what is the payoff by chasing this? Yeah,
that's interesting. I can't think about what I will feel like at 9 p.m. on November 2nd when these gigs are done. This has been such a focus for me. So it's not, this whole thing has not been just to that end. Obviously, these performances are big to me. Yeah. I'm going back to what I call one of my hometowns. You know, I grew up musically in Portland. So the people that will be in the audience, hopefully, there will be my old colleagues that I grew up with musically, the new dudes in town who, you know, again, can play circles around me in certain aspects. They still can't do this show. So there's a lot of charge in stepping out on that stage with quite a varied, very knowledgeable audience, very, very well versed in new music and versed in what's real and not just show. The journey really is it.
Is it the journey or the process? Is the process of building these tracks, the process of learning the music, the process of, is that the journey, or is the journey defined as something different than the process?
Yeah, I hadn't looked at those differently.
The process would be, I would imagine, in your hands, in your whatever of it. I would guess the journey
mechanics of the preparation, right? Yeah. The journey is kind of the me that stands back and watches me go through the process. There's that, and how that affects me, who that makes me in the end. I would say what I want to get from this is, to quote, I think it goes back to Larry Bird, not leaving anything on the court. Yeah. I want to come to the end of each of those performances with no regrets. Like, oh, if I could have that back again, to be able to, oh, I didn't quite get that, I didn't quite say what I wanted. I want that last note to nail that last B and say, oh, that was great. Yeah. From my perspective, and I am supremely critical, but I am looking at this show more as the gestalt. Yeah. I want the effect. It's kind of the way the show's designed. It's an hour long, and it's like a record album. It is all these pieces, and each one of those is very important, but it's the whole that I want to communicate. I want to hold these audience members in my hand for that entire hour and not lose them. And at the end, they kind of wake up like, whoa, that was great. Yeah. But I want to be able to say, that was great. I don't need them to say, oh, Luanne, that was such great performance. You know, I hope I get some of that. Their kudos be wonderful. I want to feel that. And that's my goal. I want to feel like I could not have put in one more ounce of energy, of preparation, or have done anything different. And the key for me for that, and I've learned this over the years, sometimes the hard way, is I want to show up for it. Because, especially a program like this, I can be so nervous that I'll get through the first piece and I'm playing the second piece going, how did that first one go? I don't even remember. I was hardly there.
Yeah.
None of these pieces can I afford that. I want to show up for everything good and everything not so good that happens. And as long as I am present for each moment, then I get to the end and it's like, yeah, we had an experience.
Yeah.
And that's success for me.
Interesting. Giving it all. Giving it, I mean, so many creatives would be like, I want to leave a song that matters, or I want to leave. I feel that's so different, that the performance of it to you is the most important.
Yeah.
Thing, the performing art of it.
Yeah. I don't think in terms of, what I leave in this life. Those thoughts are coming to me a little bit more these days. But I don't have kids, so I don't think about passing things on. What comes to me, and it's kind of like I was saying for these master classes, it's like, I have an opportunity to share some of this knowledge, some of these experiences, that if I could streamline their path in a more easy way, great, I would. And how can I do that? What would I have listened to at that point? So I do want to share some of this. I do want to leave some of these things. I can't really fast forward enough to think, okay, after I'm gone, what will there be left of me? What will people still say about me? I'm not big on recording me. Yeah. I am. My value, I feel, is live.
You want to take those experiences with you.
I do, and I want to give those experiences.
Yeah.
I recently got the most amazing email from a musician on the island here on Salt Spring. There was a possibility of another marimba player coming, and we were talking on the program committee, and I was 2 thumbs up. It's like, more marimba, yeah. But the response of one of the other committee members said, great, I love marimba, and that's wonderful, but if we're only going to hear marimba periodically, I want it to be Luanne. I would rather hear what Luanne offers 100 times over someone else coming in, because she takes chances, she brings new sounds. All these things I could never have said myself. It's like, wow, I was so pleased. Not that I got these kudos, but I touched someone. The unique things that I do made a difference in this relatively small community, that they want to hear it again. It's like, oh, what are you going to do this time? I got their ear. That matters to me. That I make something that they can listen to over and over and over again, that's not my calling.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel guilty about that.
Why do you feel guilty?
I don't have a website.
Oh, jeez.
I want to invite people to come to this program. Say, well, come hear what I play. No, you got to hear this. Trust me.
Well, that's me. I might have bugged you about that too.
Well, you did.
Let's get you on YouTube. Let's get this out there.
I know, but you aren't the only one.
Yeah.
It really should be, I guess, in bits. But the ultra perfectionist in me is, I
you want
never.
it to be live. You want it to be there.
Well, it's never perfect enough to hear it over and over and over again.
I see. But the imperfections are what's is where the beauty is.
Well, yeah, to a certain degree.
Well,
but that's that's my insecurity, and But should I have a website? Should I put stuff out? I keep thinking, okay, this one, I'll have this great collateral and put this out there. But how many more times am I going to do this? Yeah. Am I going to do this for another year? Am I going to do it for another 10 years? Is this the last? I don't know. I am playing it as if this is the last.
Yeah.
And then every year, I did this when we moved here. It's like I'm moving to a Canadian island. It's not a direct career path upwards, but it has been. In these last 12 years, I have played some of the most compelling, interesting to me, high-level gigs as I've played in my career. So you never know.
I guess the thing in that is it is whatever you make it, right?
Right. And then what happens to you too? Your circumstances present themselves, and then what do you do with that?
I think the idea that, you obviously, if there's one thing that I've learned since I've been working towards what you're calling this North Star, it's like, it's you really don't know, you really when you stop caring about what other people, if people are paying attention or not,
Right.
people pay more attention
Mm-hmm.
because you're giving them something that's worth paying attention to.
Right.
And I think that, I mean, how messed up is that? Like that is like a brain screw right there, where you're a insecure creative being for so many years of your life, and then all of a sudden you get security enough to not care, and then you get the payback of what you were hoping when you were insecure the
Right.
whole entire time.
Well, that goes along with what I said about wanting to tell these young students, follow what your passion is.
That concerns me. Like, do they need to be ready for it though? What do you feel in terms of you have to be ready for that, to hear that, and to be okay going down that path?
Absolutely. You have to be prepared when opportunities arise.
Okay.
This does not mean go sit on a rock somewhere and wait for inspiration to hit.
Like The Secret? That's a great book.
Yeah,
You think
yeah.
it will happen.
Right. Just picture it.
Yeah.
That is not to say positive
Oh, of course.
visualization, all that is, is all good. But follow up what your passion is by doing the work. None of this comes by, sitting and watching the ferry go by.
Yeah.
No, I have a zillion and one ideas that have come through my mind through the years. Unless I want to put my sticks to the drum, my mallets to the marimba, nothing will happen. So the cost of doing business, or the cost of entrance, is the hard work. A lot of why I continue to play here is because I love playing high-level music with musicians I respect and like as people. And that's been the line for me of what gigs I'll say yes to now has to be with people I like, with music I like.
Yeah.
And short of that, I don't have to do it.
But there's a third option when all the musicians say, what does it pay?
Well,
That's the scary
I know,
option.
yes.
If you remove that option, then I believe in your two
Right.
options, absolutely.
And for many, many years, I had to
Yep.
answer that. And I totally respect that. That's making a living. That's
Yeah.
being an adult. That's taking care of yourself. And that's being a professional, too. I just am fortunate now that's not where I need to. I don't have to do it for money. So when you take that out, that's partly why I'm able to do this kind of stuff. And I feel so grateful.
Well, if you're looking at these students, and obviously, I'm generation behind you, and then these will be a generation behind me. It's. I guess if you were to tell them that, they'd probably look at you and go, "Well, how am I going to pay my rent or whatever?" I think the thing that when you're at that age, the thing that I missed, that I wish that I had done, is I was always willing to put the work in, but it's about where was the work? What work were you doing?
Exactly. I spent years practicing the four-stroke roughs in Lieutenant Kiji, or the evenness and the accents in the xylophone part to Porgy and Bess. Oh, now that gave me technique, but I wish I had those hours back and had been practicing different grooves on marimba, or I wish I'd been practicing with that precision different compositions and playing different, just other music. But I was on the orchestral path, and in order to go down that path, you do have to do that stuff over and over and over. And again, it got me, it's been a great story, but it's not for everyone, and it is okay to have other dreams. But whatever that dream is, work your butt off. You have to. It's competitive, and it matters. If you want to do it well.
I also think that if you were to look at that and just being the realist that I am, and having been broke as heck, living in a shitty apartment in New York City to where I am now, it's like I never thought I could get to where I am now, being that guy there. So seeing that side of it.
Right.
And at that point in my life, I was chasing the dream that I'm now chasing. And I gave up on that to kind of go to make money, which turned out great, and I was able to do that and able to kind of be comfortable. And the thing that I realize now, if I were to look back on that version of myself, was I wasn't ready for it at the time, but I think if you're talking to these students and there's so many out there, it's like, okay, cool. Well, if you look at them as two entities, you have this beautiful situation right now where. So I meet a lot of singer-songwriters, and singer-songwriters, or anywhere, like LA is terrible for this as a joke. Like, you're an actor, well, you're being a waiter.
Right.
And I think being an actor, that's great because you're learning skills, you're learning versions of yourself. Like that complements each other.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're like working in a coffee shop as a musician, that doesn't, I mean, you're gaining stories. You're like, I'm trying to look at all the positives.
Right.
But if you make a living in the, like if you're able to make a living in the music industry, like say, I mean, take me as an example. If I'm playing saxophone on sessions for different people, I'm and now what I want to do as this person is create my own music, which involves playing saxophone, but writing songs and living stories and working with producers and being better at all that stuff. If you look at all your opportunities to make the money and you look at the entities and that can help you in what you really want to do and develop those on the side, then you've got this perfect thing. So it's not like you're digging ditches, as I always joke with my trumpet player friend, digging ditches and then going and playing an instrument. They don't complement each other. They actually hurt each other. Yeah. But if you can exist, somewhat in the industry and able to separate those two things, but find growth somewhere in that. So if you're a young musician and you say you just like, the way that I always looked at life was, if I'm on a wedding gig for 4 hours, there's things that I can work on that. I may hate it, but I'm going to I could listen to the lyrics of what these popular songs are and ingest those. I could hear melodies and ingest those. I could try to execute to the best of my ability, even though nobody gives a damn and they're dancing to Superstition drunk. Right. You just look at it and you're like, okay, I want to play this part the best I can play it so that when I'm in the studio tomorrow for no money, that I do it well so that it moves forward. Right. And I think that's, if you can separate those things, and when you say the work, you can put the work in. I mean, people either have a work ethic or they don't, but you can put the work in, but put the work in smartly. Right. So when you're doing, if I were to look at yours as an example, it would be sitting there for hours working on stuff that would complement your orchestral life that pays your bills, but then take 45 minutes and learn marimba patterns. That would be the perfect place for a lot of these students to start. Oh, absolutely. And you have to pay your dues. Absolutely, yeah. And, you wouldn't be in this place if you didn't know how to do all that in the orchestral elements. Absolutely. That's a part of you. Right. Yeah. I had an option once when I was, as I was leaving Berkeley in Boston and moving west, I had an opportunity actually to go to Nashville or to LA and do studio work, perhaps doing percussion in a band or with another artist. And I thought, that could be very cool. And the guy who was promoting me at the time said, you have more technique than most of the people out there doing that. And I thought, I admire what they do, I respect what they do, and think, I couldn't do that. Yet all of that orchestral work that I did, all that technique work, would allow me in that door had I wanted to go that direction. And it wasn't that I could just go in there and groove. I brought my whole toolbox of that technique that you had developed. Yeah. Now I would then have to learn many things stylistically and what's appropriate for that genre of music, but that I could do. That's ears and musicianship, and I didn't go down that path. But definitely I take any bit of technique I have and use it to within an inch of its life. Yeah. I need everything I can get, because that is a limiting factor. You can only play as fast as you can play, or the pieces or the music with whatever you're given in your hands or in your chops. It's like that's a limiting factor. So make sure you know that as you're learning as a young student or at any point, and keep pushing that line, or keep that wall from moving in on you. And don't forget that that's the work that has to go into it too. I would think it's like people think that they can just. There has to be I mean, if you want to write songs for a living, you've got to sit down and write songs. Right. But you also have to try other things, like chase other stuff, like write short stories. Pick a topic and write, say I'm going to write on this topic for an hour. Challenge yourself to build that toolbox so that when you're in a session that just happens to be magical and you're with somebody, or what I found is an emotion will hit me and it's you're limited by how fast you can play. Right. You're limited by what you sound like, but you're limited by your toolbox. So my view on that was always, if you're not inspired that day, then build your toolbox. But that's the thing that people forget. It's you have to have the tools to do it. They don't just magically come, and that's where the work comes in. Yeah. And a lot of these students that are coming, it's you have a chance to just build your toolbox, so that when inspiration hits and your soul is speaking to you, you can now write your soul or play your soul out there.
Right. So that deep passion, what your soul is wanting to say, doesn't stay locked up inside of you.
Yes.
You actually have the tools to let it out. There's nothing greater than that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than that if you can't say that. Like to hear something and not be able to communicate it is stifling.
Yeah, and I think we get lost in the fact that we always see people, especially nowadays, we always see people at their best. And I think that's the scary thing with a lot of the artists that I've talked to, where when we look at the past, and it's like we got the best of Mozart, we got the best of Shakespeare, but you don't realize. I mean, obviously Mozart and some of those, like, we like these freak stories of how they're 5 years old and they're these freaks. But Mozart started playing Bach to start, and he probably sucked at first. He didn't just freaking wake up at 5 years old and could just do it.
He didn't?
But or Shakespeare, it's like you see their best, and I think that that's what a lot of young creatives and a lot of young musicians get so caught up in, because people will have these, they'll always want to show their best. They don't want to show the growth process, because
Right.
there's still a beauty in that, and I think people want to be a part of that. So it's like, if you made something that you're okay with, or you are ready to play a concert, do it, because you're either going to fail or you're going to succeed. But it's a moment in that moment where you can jump off to the next place of like, okay, well, now I'm going to do it better, but I'm not scared what people think of that, because that's a part of me.
Right.
It's a part of where I'm at. And we've all gone up there and not felt like we performed our best,
Right.
or failed. And I think people are so scared to fail now.
Well, therein lies the fear,
Yeah.
and some people can't get over that fear enough to just step out on stage and do it.
Yeah.
But you have to meet yourself at some point.
You do.
And that is a defining moment. There are people who should not be stepping out on stage.
Yes.
It's too much for them. And no one needs to go through torture. This does not have to be torture, stepping out on
And
stage.
you learn pretty quickly if you're built for it. For
Right,
sure.
exactly.
Yeah, it would be like anything. It's like if you walk, if you get your law degree and you walk into court and you get your butt handed to you, you're like, that only happens so many times before you're like, maybe I need to do something else in this business. I
right.
think it's the same thing with music. There are hard realities of it, you know, and not everybody's cut out for it. And there's so many avenues. Like, you don't have to be on stage.
Well, that's the thing. That's another part of finding
Yeah.
your passion.
Yeah.
Maybe it is writing, maybe it is producing.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, don't be afraid of that.
Yeah.
And embrace that.
But try it.
Do
all.
the work.
Do the work and try it all.
Right.
Yeah.
And especially as a student too, try those things that may not be your lifetime career.
Yeah.
Play in an orchestra when you get the chance to do it.
Yeah.
It may be the only time you do it. It may be your career.
Yeah.
But do it and find out.
And it's just, we become such a specialist society. Like I hear about it a lot in the sports world, where it's like, especially in Canada, where it's like, oh, you have this, your 5-year-old has a passion for hockey. And then it's like year round hockey until they're 13, and they're like, Mom and Dad, I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
And a lot of the older hockey players are talking on the thing, that they're retired now, and they're like, I loved playing soccer. I love playing baseball. Because it developed different parts of my brain, different muscles. I didn't burn out on hockey. Yeah, I spent a lot of time at the ice rink, but it was like I got all these other things and I think that's such an important thing for musicians. You got to experience life to be able to talk about life.
Yep.
And life is just, it's going and having coffee with somebody that's a lawyer. It's going, it's like, it's all these different things that it's, it's playing different instruments. It's sitting down and like, okay, well, today I'm going to fiddle around on the piano, and you've discovered something that you can bring to here.
Right.
I think people just get so specialized because they're so concerned with keeping up. They're like, oh my God, that person's so talented because they're just writing songs. But it's like, or this person just plays marimba. But it's, well, no, she plays marimba and has this soul because she's done all these other things.
Right.
And
there's something to say because you've done all these other things.
Having something to say.
Right.
Yeah. Not being scared to allow yourself to learn about the earth and learn about the world, to have something to say. And it comes like some people I've met, they can be 15 years old, and they write a song, and you're like, holy shit, that's it. Like that person is speaking to me, and they're 15.
Right.
But who knows? I mean, maybe something happened to them as a child, and they have something to say. And then sometimes it takes people until they're, 50 to be like, I haven't really lived life, but now I feel like I have something. Like, people come to it in their own terms, but they have to be open to it. I think,
Well, I see that in the short time I've known you and followed what events been going on in your life and what comes afterwards, what music comes out of your experiences. You seem to embrace every experience that you have and glean whatever lessons are from it, and then make this great music from it.
Yeah.
And that's an opportunity, taking what life presents and creatively.
Lemons or apples.
Exactly.
It's like you have to choose how you want to perceive that.
Yeah.
And look at the beauty in whatever that is.
Yeah.
And that's a part of failing. I mean, when certain things go on in your life, it's like you can't control. I mean, it is an element of failing, and it's an element of like, okay, well, I have a choice now about how I want to look at this and how I want to perceive this. And then when you get on the other side of it, and I'm not saying anything that you didn't tell me 2 years ago, but when you get on the other side of certain things, you're like, wow, I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah.
Look at where I am now.
Yeah.
And then you're like, and then when you start seeing things happen in your life that you don't really, like we were joking about it earlier, like just the little things. Like I was sitting at the ferry yesterday, and I got there too late, and we missed having dinner, and I was in my head about, damn, I want to hang with you guys, didn't work. And then I'm sitting there for hours and my battery dies. And they're like, Salt Spring Island, please load onto the ferry. And I'm like, oh, shoot. But it's like, I could choose how to deal with that.
Right.
My first fight or flight response was, this isn't meant to be, I'm just going to go home.
Right.
And it's like, because then I got to get a jump. Now I got to do this, and I'm already late, and it's like, I'm not going to have a day. But I wouldn't be experiencing this right
and
now
here we are.
had I made that choice.
Right, right.
So,
which the very first weekend you were here.
Yeah.
I already had my life was full that weekend. It's like, no, I can't meet this person I never met before who I really want to meet. And it's like, no. Instead, I said yes. And here we are.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So grateful.
Well, I'm grateful for that. Absolutely grateful for that. I think we should probably leave it at that. That's probably the perfect spot. I want people to know where to go see you play, though.
Oh, excellent.
So I mean, obviously we don't have a website that I can send them to. Where can I send them to?
Well, it is through the organization Third Angle New Music in Portland, Oregon. And the concerts are November 1st and 2nd at 7:30. And I will not say the exact space because I know that'll be on the website in Southeast Portland. But you go to thirdangle.org.
Thirdangle.org, okay.
To buy tickets. The show is, about an hour long with a talkback session afterwards.
Awesome.
And one of the other amazing things that a benefit from this concert is that the composer who wrote the variations called Play Like a Girl, Eve Baglarian, composer from New York, she is going to be there.
Oh, amazing.
And I'm doing those variations of hers and 2 other pieces of hers performing with her. So she'll be there as a performer and also available afterwards for questions, comments, and just a fabulous gathering of talkback afterwards.
Awesome.
So
and
November 1st and 2nd.
November 1st and 2nd. And I know you have one coming up at Kwantlen, right?
Yeah, Kwantlen
That one
Polytechnic University.
Say that one more time. I just interrupted you. Kwantlen what?
Kwantlen Polytechnic University.
That's a mouthful.
KPU, yeah. And it's in Surrey or Langley.
I know Kwantlen College is in Langley. I didn't
Okay,
know.
then it's in Langley.
In Langley,
I know
okay.
that's
And that's
close.
at noon coming up.
It's
right?
at noon, and this is just a less than an hour long concert. So it'll be pieces from Play Like a Girl with a few of them taken out. Eve Baglarian will not be at that one.
And Play Like a Girl is, can they Google that and kind of see what that is online and kind of hear some pieces like that like parts of that previously leading up to it?
The best way to hear pieces would be to go, probably, well, if you Google Play Like a Girl, you'll get a whole plethora of options. Go to Eve Baglarian's website.
Okay.
And Google Play Like a Girl, and it'll show her variations.
Okay, great.
Let's see if there's any other.
Anything else coming up?
Those 3 are the main focuses now, and we will see what that brings.
I love that.
Onward and upward.
Well, let's go do a hike on this beautiful island.
Yes, that'll be great. Thank you for this.
Thank you for doing it.
My pleasure.
Watch this heavy heart of mine turn this water into wine. Light your match and let it glow, so I know my way home. One more game of tic-tac-toe. You be X and I'll be you. Fall in love like dominoes, then I'll come back home. If I can't find you, go get lost in the simple things. Might I remind you, chase your tail and dream those dreams. One more glass to set me free. Forget right past what's in front of me. I'll be fine, they tell me so, 'cause I know my way